You know, I could be working on my books right now, but I decided to talk about Les Mis instead. Welcome to my life. The sad thing is that I wrote that line months ago when I first started working on the script, but it still applies on the day I'm recording this. So in case you don't know, Les Misérables is a musical originally written in French in 1980 and translated into English in 1985. It is based off of a novel written by Victor Hugo and published in 1865 and tells the story of several people's lives in early 19th century France. Obviously the whole thing is pretty old, but guess what? I still live under a rock, so I only just listened to it a few months ago. And now I love it, because of course I do. And today I want to talk not just about why I love it, but also why I find it to be uniquely fascinating. This is all going to be in reference to the musical, by the way, because even though the book does have the same message as the musical, of course, the presentation differs, and the musical was also my first introduction to this story in general. Anyway, let's get into it.
First off, I just find it kind of amazing that we have this musical, this incredibly popular, beloved musical, and it actually has a positive portrayal of Christians, and even more than that, the clergy. The bishop is probably the most purely good character in the entire show, and his act of kindness has a massive domino effect which ends up indirectly improving a lot of people's lives. Well, except for Javert, probably, but you know, for the most part.
And as a disclaimer, I do know that Victor Hugo is very critical of the Catholic Church, and the bishop is kind of supposed to be the exception rather than the rule. But the point still stands, and I am still very, very appreciative of any positive representations of the clergy. Like, yes, obviously, there have been a ton of awful, corrupt priests throughout the church's history, but the good, holy men who are actually doing their job and living their lives in the service of God and their fellow men deserve recognition, and I'm very glad that we have the bishop as an example of that. Going off of that a little bit, it absolutely blows my mind how much this musical gets it. I mean, the first line before the finale is,
"To love another person is to see the face of God."
and that's kind of what Christianity is all about. That's what life is all about. That's the point of everything. And I think that is one of the reasons that this musical has resonated with me in a very deep, emotional way, because it connects with a very specific part of my identity in a way that many stories don't. In general, I think it's why this whole story has remained so popular for so long, because it speaks to this very real truth and this very real need in our world. Okay, so I wasn't really sure where to put this part, but I really wanted to share these thoughts, and it kind of relates to that last bit, so here's where it's going. Guess what, guys? Eponine is the new rogue, as in, I think way too deeply about her character, and I spend way too long talking about her. But anyway, here are my thoughts.
So at the end of the show, when Valjean dies, Fantine and Eponine appear as spirits to guide him to heaven. And it makes total sense for Fantine to be there, right? Because he rescued her and raised her daughter. That's a really beautiful, poignant closure to their relationship. But I have seen so many people question, why is Eponine there? Because, like, she and Valjean had one interaction, they probably don't know each other's names, they have no relationship at all. Now the reason she is there is because Valjean saved the life of Marius, the person she loved the most, just as Valjean saved Cosette, the person Fantine loved the most. But there is more to it, and it's more of why I love this musical so much.
So Eponine's life sucks, right? We all know this. She sings about it in On My Own, about how she's literally never known happiness, and the only time that she feels remotely happy in her life is when she's dreaming that Marius loves her back. And then, you know, she dies, and that's really sad. But the beautiful thing is that now she's in heaven, and she's experiencing nothing but love and joy. So much so that she's got plenty to share, even with a relative stranger. So it doesn't matter that she and Valjean don't know each other, because they're going to all be one in the body of Christ. And I just absolutely love that. But speaking of Eponine and of her family, and despite what I just said, I've seen many people say that in some ways this story is oppressively sad. Like, just considering the fact that it's faster to name the characters who live rather than the ones who die, or how some of the most awful people seemingly get off scot-free in the end. But I partially object to that statement, and this is the main reason why I find Les Mis so interesting.
So at the very end of the musical, a lot of people are dead. Good people who did not deserve to die. And the Thénardiers, two really awful people, sing their final triumphant song about how their dishonest, selfish, cruel life has allowed them to outlive both of their children and seemingly be far happier than any of the other characters we have seen.
Also, just as an aside here, like, I know the Thénardiers are supposed to be funny, but like, really? I don't know, maybe I just don't like watching jerky people being jerks. Maybe if they didn't abuse children and rob corpses, I would feel differently, but I digress.
The thing I find so interesting about the Thénardiers' ending is the final line of Beggars at the Feast, where they both declare,
Every single woman now!
Now, it's pretty obvious that this line is meant in a sarcastic, mocking way. The Thénardiers don't even believe in hell, if dog eat dog is any indication. But at the very end of the musical, we see all of these other characters, including their daughter, in heaven. So, like, if the Thénardiers keep up their current method of living their life, then yeah, they will be in hell. And even if they seemingly live long, happy, full lives while good, selfless characters like Fantine or Eponine die young and unjustly, ultimately their fate will be so, so much worse.
And this is what I find so interesting, because I've seen people say that the Thénardiers' ending is making a point about how unfair the world is, that they're such garbage people, and yet at the most the only punishment they get is a punch in the face. But I disagree, because ultimately Les Mis has a beautiful message of hope. God is just, and in the end, how you live your life does matter. As it says in the finale. That's just absolutely beautiful to me, and a point that I've so rarely seen made anywhere else. But it gets even better because the musical goes a step further than that. It doesn't just say, these people's lives sucked, but they gotta go to heaven, so it's okay. No, it calls upon you, in the audience, to rise up and make a difference so that people don't have to suffer so much while they're on Earth. And it demonstrates in a very clear way the need for people to do that, the need for us to be Christ to others. We see so many examples of how the love of one person towards another empowers them and gives them the grace they need to be good.
The bishop is grace to Valjean, Valjean is grace to Cosette, Marius is grace to Eponine, and it shows how those actions of kindness and love and courage can make a difference, even if you never live to see it. And that is just amazing.
So yeah, I really hope all of that made sense. I've just fallen in love with this musical and I really wanted to talk about it. If you've never listened to it, you definitely should, because even if you just throw away everything I just said, the music itself is dope. My personal favorite version is the 25th anniversary concert, as you probably guessed by now. But there are a lot of great renditions out there, so poke around and see what you like. Thank you for watching, let me know any thoughts you have if you feel so inclined, and I will see you when tomorrow comes. Well, not actually, it'll be in 2 weeks like usual, but I was just trying to reference the... You know what, never mind, goodbye.